Welcome back to another episode of Office Hours. I have some time this morning before lessons start, and after a pretty full day yesterday of teaching, I ended the day talking to one of my more advanced students about a great song that was brought to my attention again as a wonderful playground and practice, an area for us to practice chord tone soloing, and in particular, this student was studying the use of thirds and sixths to outline chord changes and stuff like that. But I took it a step further and started teaching this other student a little bit more about how to solo through chord tones, utilizing chord shapes and triadic shapes and arpeggios and this kind of stuff. Because as advanced as this player is, that element of his playing didn't really get developed somehow. The truth is we end up, hey, good morning, guys. We end up spending an awful lot of time as younger players, learning songs and kind of getting trapped in the idea of playing what already exists rather than learning how to create and make beautiful sounds come out of this thing, right? At our behest or at our beck and call. So I'm going to remedy that. You don't need to see me. And hopefully, you know what, I'm not sure whether or not this background is actually helping or hurting in terms of the light. I think if I turn this to sleep, that's nicer, I think. Okay, so today we're talking about Ramble on Rose, okay? And for those of us that don't know the chords, let me lay them out for you real fast, and then we'll get into sharing the loop and all that stuff. So we're playing, the song starts on a D chord with this kind of ostinato. If we get off the neck pickup, it'll sound cluckier. Right, definitely a lot more like that Garcia sound, okay? So, and what are we doing? Root, 6, 5, root, 6, 5, root, root. Again, it's the old lysergic Motown, okay? It's all right, and what does it have? It has the shuffle. We're hearing a we're hearing a shuffle, okay? So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2. That is happening while at the same time we kind of have this halftime energy to it. Like it's not a fast shuffle. It's kind of a, I always envisioned a dun 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 dun, like not a rush. There's no rush here. All right. So we're going to start by playing that kind of groove, this ostinato. But if we're looking at the chords, right, we're looking at a D chord, E7. All right. So we're already non-diatonic. F sharp minor, G to D, D, G to A7 or A. Where's that out of tunage coming out of? It's weird. Some chords sound good and some chords don't. Weird. Let's get that voicing squared away. Went sharp overnight. Weird. Yeah, so that's sharp still. All right, so weird. Yeah, that sounds awful. All right, so we've got a little loop here. All right, it's got a phony bobby sound and a phony fill bass line. Okay, so if we start out here playing roots, all right, we're going to come up and follow the roots off the D note off the 5th fret, 7th fret rather, G string. So we're going to be starting on our D, up to E, up to F sharp, G, D, D, G, A. Okay, that's that's what we're looking at, okay? And that's how it's gonna, and then we have a little, all right? And we can bring a little bit more sparkle out of that sound, I think. There's gotta be a way to do that. What do we got here? Boink, that there. Maybe a little less, a little bit more of that, a little bit more of that. There it is, okay. Need that high end if you're going to do the Garcia thing. All right, so those are the roots that we're going to target, and we want to learn how to riff based on those. So if we off that D note, we're going to go, right? So let's do that. Target the third of our E, okay? On that downbeat, I want you to hit that G sharp, okay? Sounds really nice if we come down chromatically. Kind of an anticipatory Parker enclosure, right? Like that kind of thing could work, right? So if we could. That's back into everybody's favorite hidden F sharp minor voicing. Looks like an A6 chord. All right, A6 and F sharp minor are relative major and minor chords. All right, all we're doing is subbing out the bass note. All right, so that was what that. Okay, so now we're on our F sharp chord. We could play it a little more linear, right? Okay, we're over top of that A chord now, and we started on its flat 7, and we did one of these Jer Bear kind of waterfall licks. Triple it, triple it, triple it, triple it, downbeat. Okay, now oddly enough, that downbeat is ending on an upstroke, okay? And that is explained because of the double downstroke that happens earlier in the line. Down, up, down, right? Down, up, down, down. Okay? Rather than having to go down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, we forego the orthodoxy of you know, alternate picking with that double downstroke to make it flow a little easier. And you see how it affords us the opportunity to add that accent on that. Okay? Let's try that again. Let's keep building, okay? Okay, there's a real hit. That's the third of our G that we're about to play into, and we go ba do boo ba boo ba ba boo. See a G arpeggio right there, and then a little D arpeggio. So, right up to E. F sharp. That's the boo-ba-didn't-wap-a-doom that we're playing over. And then we can come here. Okay, let's see if we can make some magic happen there. This tune is just perfect, this little playground, okay? Wonderful, wonderful way for you to practice your lines. Now, how are we going to do this? Well, we have to start with some infrastructure. What do I mean by that? You have to know these rhythm chord shapes. If you don't know what's going on with some of these larger shapes, like the D here, and then here, and then here, and then here, right? And then the E7, all those shapes, right? All this stuff. F sharp minor. G. Right, we've got that one here. And then the A would be all those things. And it's an A7 on the very end of it. So we're going to need to learn all of our little that or. So those are sixths. These are thirds. Same notes, just flipping the octave. See this note here? That's the same as this. So we're keeping this the same. And we're just going to put an E note above the line or below it. Okay. And there's this great little rule that I like to share, or a hack, trick that we can think about whenever we see the same shape, we can connect it chromatically. Go up like that, or so we've got the same shape by 2 frets and then another same shape by 2 frets. So we could go okay, now this E chord that we're about to get into, because it's a dominant 7th chord, it gives us the ability to take those sixths one step further. When we encounter a true dominant chord, we have this kind of relationship between the 5th and the 3rd that occurs in this voicing, and it also, that same shape, comes up a minor 3rd. Okay, and functions quite handsomely as the 7th and 5th degree. So we have the, and then this would be, right? So we've got a lot of good stuff on that E chord. So if we're thinking about doing like a little sixths, that's a bitch of a word to say, study, we could go. Right? See that? So that was me going, coming from the 3rd up to the 5th and going, okay, and we're allowed to just use those chromatics. Sounds lovely. Okay, or we could have gone. Sorry, that would have been again. Right? Okay, and we can start having a lot of fun with those little shapes. Not necessarily because we want to do them in our solos, but mainly because we want to learn how to arpeggiate them while we solo. We could go. we can start telling those little sing-songy kind of stories. Well, let's check in and see if anybody's saying anything on the interwebs here. Oh, I actually brought my iPad over here. Not enough space on my desktop, unfortunately, to do it properly. Let's see what's going on here. See if anybody's got any questions or has any comments regarding, oh my God, I'm an old man, fucking miserable dude. Here we go, my view channel. Hope everybody's doing okay today. There's 9 people watching us. And I see just one person saying good morning, Jack, which is fine. I did get a couple of thumbs up, though. That's nice. Okay, so let's see if we can make some headway here. Let's try to form a little bit of a system, okay? Let's try to envision the chords as like back of the, how would it look to play this in? That's a great question. How would this look in one position? Okay, we can definitely do that. I personally think it's easier to first examine it like this. Okay, so allow me, if you would, Guitar for Everyone, to teach it in what I think to be the most accessible way. Okay, we're going to look at triads. We're not going to look at sevenths. We're not going to take it that one step further and add that fourth note. We're going to just go, we're going to see the triad of the 1, 3, and 5 of the D, the 1, 3, 5 of the E, the 1 minor 3, 5 of the F sharp, then the 1, 3, 5 of the G, 1, 3, 5 of the D, now on the E string, right? Everything up until that point was this. And then back here, and then here. Okay, so if we did that. Just doing that alone is not a lot of work. It should be totally visible for everybody, in my opinion. You should be able to see that that's what's up, man. All right, now if we want to see it in one position, things can get a little bit dicier, right? Because now we have to look at like the 3-dimensional chess shit on the guitar neck. So you'd see the D here, the E here, or you could just see that, but that's not a true triad, right? You have to get to the third somehow. So if we're going to really be dogmatic about this, F sharp minor is the same shape but kind of spread out like that, or right? Sorry, that would be, or here. All right, F sharp minor, or, and we have a G here, right? So that's going to be root 3, 5 root, 5 3 root of the G, and then 5 3 root of the D, and then D, G, A. So we can get at everything within one hand spread there. James Anderson writes, "Good morning, Jack. Sorry, I was watching TV, so I couldn't text you from there. Love playing this progression. Thanks. You're welcome. I love playing it too. It's a really great proving ground for the kind of methodology that I teach, and it's a nice slow song. And if we want to, we can shift away from that and actually focus on, like, we can use it as a playground for testing bending accuracy and go with more of a Europe 72 style, like. nice little etude there where we're just practicing bending into, right? And then what is that? A little enclosure practice if we want. Really a great progression to work on your Jerry vibe. All right. So let's keep going though with the idea of playing it in one position. Okay. So that was a good. I think that's a very valuable skill to have because I think there's a huge difference between the way I approach this music and Jerry in terms of the execution of it. I think I've learned his methodology to a certain extent to like how this is done, right? But I think that that's the only way to do it. So that's not really that great an accomplishment. There's really only one way to play over this stuff and make it sound right. And that's to follow the chords. But what Garcia was a master at is just like kind of parking in one spot and being able to get to it all very economically, like in one little spot. All right, so if you can do that here, then learn to do it 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 here. Keep moving up. So if we're going to frame this around this C-shaped D chord, we want right? So that's the D and the E chord. Yeah, that's our G. G, D, D, G. Right, all happening there within those first 4 frets. Pretty slick. All right, so if we can do that there, then we bring it up here. So which scale degrees would Jerry target with those half-step bends? Oh, well, I don't know about what he would do, but I tend to think about bending into the third, right? So if we're going... So that would be up to the root. So... like that. All right, so if we're looking at that's just an opportunity, it's more of a low-hanging fruit. When it's easy to do it, do it. Because the more you make that not a conscious choice, but just like almost every time I get close to a note, I just kind of bend into it a little bit. The same way I rarely approach a third without going and coming up into it. Even those little... Right, that's the 1 fretter into the third again. That's over the E chord. Right, that's a lot different than going and doing like a country bend. That's a lot different than that Garcia, that kind of winsome vibe that it gives. Right, that kind of thing, really slick. But let's still stick with the idea. Here we are. What was that? That was F sharp. Right, so we could get the F sharp. G, D, D, G. Yep. See, I'm already starting to move up the neck. You don't want to rely on that when you practice. It's okay to do it when you play, but that's how you can tell when I've lost focus, actually. I need to be, if I'm going to, look, I think I'm at it, I hate to say something like do as I say, not as I do. Because a lot of times I'll like go off piste here. I'm losing sight of the purpose of the exercise. It isn't to make music, it's to try to stay in this little area here and make the music the best you can without all the tools. They're basically teaching you to fight with one hand tied behind your back so that when you get free range access to the whole guitar, you know it in big stripes. Okay, so if we own these 4 frets, it's a great starting point. And we come up here and we have some of our old knowledge and some new knowledge right here. So that's our D's pentatonic. We were working off this one. And if you aren't familiar with all of the scales and kind of the idea based around these chords, right? There's this idea, you know, that we should understand this voicing and its adjacent pentatonic scale. How to chromaticize it. How to play the major scale there. I'm sorry. It's triads. And maybe the full arpeggio. Okay, once you have those tools, there's really nothing but time to figure out how to use them, right? So we could use thirds, like to climb the scale, or little where we do like little approach tones into each note for triad. Right, that could be a nice little opening phrase, or maybe even a little sequence like a. I already lost focus after the first time through. The idea is to stay in there, stay in the pen, keep the piggy in the pen, okay? Now if we come up here, we try the same ideas again. What would that be? That should have been the G. Right, G, D, then D, G, A. There's like a dropout in the loop. Where's my F sharp chords? Weird. Ah, there it is. Okay. I don't know what happened there. All right, cool. So we're learning here. Now, again, same idea. Major scale. Pentatonic. Triads. Okay, and then you're going to want to learn how to chromatically connect your pentatonic. D chord, then we're going to do the same idea over the E chord here. There's our E7 arpeggio. Okay, again, we're using that that kind of C shape here. It is difficult to stay in one position, yes. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. It's kind of like one of those things where if we took all the words that we wanted to say to make our point, and we put them side by side, we could read them from left to right. But when we jumble them up together and we scramble them and put them backwards and going upwards and diagonally, we create one of those kind of puzzles that you look at and you have to see that halfway across the thing, the word like anthropology is written backwards and up ascending in a diagonal or something strange like that, right? Anthropology is not that big a word, but we can't really see it backwards so well. And so the same thing is happening here. Really a challenge to kind of own the whole song in 1/4 fret area, okay? But it is arguably, while challenging, it is arguably the most productive use of your time because you're going to be finding new things. The fact that it's hard means you're on the right path, okay? If it was easy, that would indicate that you kind of already knew it, and why would you, then you're not learning anything, okay? So a lot of the ideas that I'm talking about here, I would think of as being like, if I'm playing the root and all the ideas are behind the root, I always, you know, I'm a list maker, I'm a classifier. I tend to put things in the filing cabinet in the brain. And I think of these as like backdoor ideas. This I think of as being like side door. Front door. Right, so I've got the root with like 3 different places to go. And here. All right, so I'm using the C, A, and G positions quite a lot. All right, then when I come up here, I'm going to be thinking about the E position, so that's C, A, G, E, and then finally, that's going to be like a D-shaped position. So, start to learn to fly around. I am using the caged system for this because that has become the term of art for this kind of, oops, I dropped my pick. Grab another one rather than bend over. That has become the term of art that is used amongst the online guitar educators of the universe. I must say, we don't need no stinking cage system when I grew up. We just learned chord shapes and we learned a bunch of licks that existed around there. All right, so if you can think about this lick here, you're gonna need to know that here, or maybe, or you've heard Brian Sutton call it the 3-shape method, but it's essentially also the caged. Yeah, I don't think out of shapes so much anymore as just like, there's the chord, and so all these are like, an analogy I used, and by the way, please forgive me for using so many, is that this is like we're old homesteaders and we have this vast tract of land, and we're walking out, we're gonna go, here's a stake that goes here, and we go here, and here, and here. We kind of mark out the I'm the analogy master. Sometimes they get a little gnarly, I gotta say. Sometimes they're a little too spicy for public consumption. That's why I have to click the box that says these lessons are not fit for children, because sometimes they get a little spicy. But if we staked out our the places where we planned on building our house. Like this is the footprint of the house. That's what these are, right? So Eric just chimed in, and the truth of the matter is he and I have been working together for a long time, and I remember one of the first things I taught him was actually coming up through in triads. Right? I hate that one. Ugh, so much pumping. Because you can't have it go. It has to be in discrete notes. Hard to keep the same tempo with this one as this one. All right, but talk to Trey Anastasio. That's his jam. He just comes right up through there and just goes pump, pump, pump. Very, very, very adept with his. The Big Red's got some awesome fingers. All right, so that's out of there. So if we're seeing this, we want to see the same. And then again, we'd want to see it here, or we want to have musical pluralism. We want to have multiple routes back to the sound that we're interested in. We can't think of ourselves as like the idea that we have is over here and it's an island with a bridge on from the mainland out to that island with only one way on. That's a terrible situation to be in. All right, good morning. Sorry, I was watching on TV. So which scale degrees would Jerry target with the half-step bends? Any and all. Thanks, Jack, for your time. I taught high school for 23 years. You are a master teacher. Time for a spicy joke. No, sorry. So I thank you for that. I'm fascinated with the concept of enclosures. Is it possible to add this flavor to the melody? 100%. We will touch upon that. That goes out to Robert Brinker. James Anderson calls it. You call it the back door in the rider lesson. Thanks for the bend demonstration. Oh, you're very welcome. Exercises mind bending. Gotcha. Cage system where I talked about early lessons for a late night head. Yes. That said, I actually I'm a morning guy. I love waking up early in the morning. When you have kids, all of a sudden it gives you an opportunity to kind of reset your biological clock or your, what do they call it, circadian rhythms, right? So like personal anecdote time, I used to own a recording studio, and that turned me into this kind of creature where I was going to work at like 2 p.m. and I would work till 2 or 3 a.m, and then I would go out for a late supper and come home at around 7 a.m, and then fall asleep and then wake up again 6 or 7 hours later, go to the gym, go to the thing, and do that kind of. I was living on this kind of reverse thing, and consequently you end up out at all hours of the night in Manhattan as a young buck. There's all kinds of spectacular opportunities to get into trouble and have fun, and meet some of the less savory elements of the New York metropolis. But when I met my now wife, I had to learn a lesson from the woman I had been dating prior. I was prior to my wife of 20 years. I was involved with a woman who was a medical student, and I would be coming home consistently when she was waking up to go to the hospital. And it was kind of like that thing where I was punching the clock to go to bed and she was punching the clock to go, so we were like on the opposing shifts, and it just ended up putting too much distance between me and my partner in life, and it cost me that relationship, if I'm being honest. That and the fact that we probably weren't on the same trajectory long term. And thank goodness that happened, because I got to log all those hours and learn all those lessons, including the one about losing her, who I deeply loved her, and I think she did me as well. We were together for like 7 years or something crazy. So what I thought was going to be this insurmountable heartache actually turned into just a shit ton of creativity, but along with that, a resolution that if I ever was to meet somebody who was special again, if I was ever lucky enough to have that opportunity, that I would protect that relationship by keeping more normal hours. Because being a musician and a late nighter is very, very difficult to interact with anybody from any other stripe of life. It's very difficult to meet a respectable person if you yourself are not living awake while they're awake. And I also found that my productivity went up when I woke up in the morning because I wasn't clouding my judgment with drugs and alcohol and stuff like that. And it was just it's a better model for me, especially when you have kids, you know. So there you go. I'm an analogy master. I see. Oh, so I think more in the mental image of the chord in whichever position I'm in. The truth is, I don't think in images. I think I hear in intervals. I'm not looking at the neck too much, except when I'm teaching. When I teach, I make sure that I'm showing what's happening, right? That's all based out of that C chord shaped D. Right? So what I want to encourage you to do is to be boring. All right? Don't go anywhere. Live here. This is where you live for like a week. All right? Like, I'm serious. Like, right? Do everything behind the 5th fret. All right? Like, give yourself a border, right? Like the RB Dragons up here. We don't go up there in the dusty end yet. Now we're going to promote ourselves and we're going to keep owning the ground that we cover. And by the time we get up to here, we're done because we've already started all of the lines that we learned back here. They occur here. So all of a sudden we're going. We start to know where we are and we can freely kind of bop around because we've lived in that neighborhood for a while. We know where all the goodies are in that neighborhood. We're not constricted by anything to do with convenience, right? It's not like, oh, I can only do this lick here and I can only do this lick there. So what we want to do is make sure that all of our vocabulary that we develop here is a movable feast. And then again, and then again, and then again. And then what do we have? We have the same voice spread out over the entire instrument, and then that can continue forward into the next chord. So if we've mastered the D chord, then the next thing we want to do is think about the E chord from this perspective, or right in here, frankly, we could see the E7. Right? Granted, it's going to sound a little bluesier if we use those open strings and. Okay, so still here to learn at 9:30. Yep. Okay, so let's talk about the enclosure concept. All right, let's assume that everybody internalized what I'm talking about here, and that you really should try to do this. All right, so if we're looking at enclosures, and let's even do the enclosure lesson right here, just to be on brand or whatever the hell these little kids are saying these days, right? So if we're going the easiest enclosure for you to start with, all right, an enclosure is basically a specific manner of utilizing approach tones, right? All it means is a bidirectional approach tone. So rather than going, let's say we were coming up the E7 chord here, like in this shape, okay? We could go target the root 3, 5, root 3 with 2 approach tones. So basically we went, all right, and I want you to visualize it with your ring finger. Go root 3, 5, root 3. Now I want you to go. Okay, so there, that's 2 approach tones, right? If we were to say ditch that first one, this one here, and put it above the target note, now we're surrounding the target note instead of that would shift to and that's the enclosure, okay? Somebody says, whoa. Whoa, what? Whoa, what? Is that, I mean, okay, so that's what's happening. So what we're doing is we're taking the chord shape and approaching it, right? So we could do it like this even. Okay. So that's going triplet, right? So little approach tone into each of the chord tones. So that's what's happening on a lot of this. I mean, come on, that's so Jarrett, right? Especially like late 80s Jarrett, where he would turn on the envelope filter, all right? And there is a specific enclosure that he liked to play over this song in particular, and it's a great opportunity to fulfill my promise to Robert Brinker here. I'll show it to you, even though there is a Jacksnax lesson out there for it. So if you don't feel like going, whatever this is, 47 minutes into my blatherings to find it next time, you could actually go on a smaller Easter egg hunt and just search Jacksnax Ramble on Rose Enclosure, and you'll find it. It's from the version of Ramble on Rose in Crimson, White, and Indigo, I think is what it's called. And it's basically from, I think it's from 87 or 89. And it has this great latter era Garcia thing going on where he goes a little walk up, like using the major scale from its fifth, right? So that would be like, okay. And so we're gonna go Buddha to downbeat, and we're gonna go on the downbeat, we're gonna play this. Okay, so that's triplet. Okay, and then we're gonna come into the third from the flat third. Then we're gonna go. So that's 5, 6, flat 5, and we're gonna play it like that. All right, and we're gonna flatten out our middle finger. So now we'll be able to play through the first two chords like something like that. Okay. Me likey Ramble on Rose. Yummy. Super, super awesome way to practice those chromaticisms and all kinds of stuff. It's omnipresent in Russian lullaby. I bet. While I hear Russian lullaby every now and again, I don't know why, I usually skip that song. I know I shouldn't, but you also broached this topic on Fire on the Mountain lesson as well, but that was out of the B triad shape. Absolutely cooking. Well, I thank you very much. So, Robert, are we feeling a little bit more aware of what an enclosure would look like or sound like? Now, granted, this isn't the only enclosure that's available, right? If we another great example of this same approach, which is largely based on this system, is diatonically within the scale. So first of all, you have to know the major scale. Okay, D major. So once you know those notes and you target the root, third, and fifth, you would employ this device against each of those target notes, root, 3, and 5. You would go to the diatonic scale note above the target note. That would be, in this instance, the D. The second note up would be the E. Then a chromatic approach tone, and then the target note. Okay, so the weird, that works over the root here. This is the fifth. The root again. But when we get to the third, you're going to notice that it's this. Now, why is that? That's because the fourth is actually both chromatically adjacent to the target note and the diatonic correct pitch. This is out of the scale. So this one, all right, which would be phrased here. So we would hear. Okay, that's coming up the D major, okay? So if you hear that, that's super duper Jer Bear, all right? He loved to do that, okay? And there's a couple of ways that you can, there's a couple of songs that it makes the most sense, and I'll point you in the direction of a few lessons of mine, and hopefully you can internalize and metabolize that sound a little bit by use of those lessons. One is my lesson on the, it's Promised Land, okay? So by 73, 74, the Dead had been playing Promised Land since they were kids, and it's my contention that the concept of Chuck Jerry or you know, became an idea for him, like that he decided to take that kind of and kind of jazz it up a little bit. So you start to hear him do these kind of this kind of stuff where you're hearing him make the changes. Right, so a lot of the chromatic connect the dot shit plus the start to hear this fully blown chromaticism kind of appear out of nowhere. Starts there, and it's kind of an ironic choice to do it over something as traditional as a Chuck Berry song. But I think it's kind of tongue in cheek, actually, when I think about it. I think it's just literally him being bored of it. So usually the first solo in Promised Land, he does that kind of thing, starting in 73, 74, 75. And then with the advent of the Blues for Allah stuff, there's a much wider net is cast, and we start to see more enclosures. There's a lovely one that he likes to do where you hear it in King Solomon's Marbles, right, where we hear. So anytime there's a dominant seventh chord, like over that E chord, we're going to get this. All right, so let's wait till the E7 chord appears, and I'll show you another enclosure because you You were asking so nice. Also, when you see him do that in, he uses this enclosure sound, but displaces that interval over the bar and kind of tightrope walks between the two towers of the G chord and the C chord, and they love each other. So you'll hear that. Right from the G chord, and then into the C chord, and then maybe you'll hear what does he do? A lot of that, okay? So let's, sorry for being all over the place, but you've got the D chord likes that enclosure. We could do it over both of them, I think, if we go. But I think a more effective one is, I mean, I personally prefer to chromatically kind of descend, like that kind of, like that kind of thing, which does have, that's an enclosure too. That's 3 approach tones, and then, okay, so 3, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 approach tones before we actually target the actual third of the E chord. Okay. That's arguably the most important enclosure that I use. It's called the Parker enclosure, or at least that's what I've grown to call it over and over again. So if I'm wrong, I'm really wrong for 1,000 lessons. Okay, but that's what I was told that is called. So, all right, so let's look at the idea of the, what I call the King Solomon's Marbles enclosure. Okay, so over top of the E chord, all right, which is like this, out of this E7 shape here, we're gonna target the third from underneath. So we're gonna go flat 3, 3, and then up. And this is more of a shapey thing, okay? We're gonna come up into the target note and then up. And I want you to envision like an E9 chord here and then an E6 chord here. Okay, so we're gonna be targeting the front, the back half of the E9 chord and then jump to here. So that's D string, G string. Okay, we're gonna make the same shape, but a little bit more compact on the G and B string. Okay, we'll do that over top of the E7 sound, okay? So okay, so that's something like that, okay? It's not the best use of it in my opinion here, but that is one that he uses all the time over dominant 7 chords, okay? I prefer the sound of the sorry. Okay, so you got a lot of that kind of running all over the place. Now, what was that thing there? Again, I've talked about it already. We're going to want to make sure that we understand how to chromaticize our major pentatonic shapes, okay? So what does that mean? When we're in A major here, and we take our generic A major pentatonic sound, we're going to run up chromatically from the 3 to the 5, from the 6 to the root, from the 2 to the 5 like this. And then okay, and that gives us the ability to do that over either a 1 chord, a 4 chord, or a 5 chord, right? If we want to make it more specific to the dominant 7th sound, we want to start this approach off of its flat 7, not the 6. Right, and use the flat 7 up here too. Okay, you can kind of see it falling in under the fingers there nicely. So if we do it the dominant 7 way, where we start on the G strings pattern off the flat 7, and triple it, 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 downbeat into the 3rd, right? So we can use that consecutive, right? We want to be thinking in groups rhythmically, okay? If we're not feeling right while we're playing, right, we want to be able to keep track of what we're playing, almost like we're a drummer and we're just kind of backfilling the notes that the tom-toms would have, okay, like that kind of idea. I want you to visualize like a big drum fill, right, but you're going to give a note to each one of them, kind of like if you were writing a poem and you knew you had to have a certain number of syllables, right? You'd look for words that had that many syllables, or you'd find more words to fill in the gaps that you have. If you knew what the rhyme was and you knew what the starting word was, maybe you could figure out a way to cleverly connect them, okay? And that's really what we're doing. So, and triple it, 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 down beat, okay? So let's try that over top of the A chord. Okay, I kind of started too late, so I had to end the line without all the descending part. I went back into the 3rd on the downbeat of the D chord. That's what that was. Let's try it again. Okay, that's how this shit works. And we try that same idea. If I fucking wipe out, I try to make it land. If I can make it land, even when I'm doing it incorrectly, nobody's the wiser, right? If you came and saw me play and I did the one where I started a little late and went and landed it like that into the 3rd of the downbeat of the D chord, I think everybody would have clapped. I don't think anybody would have said shit, even if they had some in their mouth, right? It's like that was all fine. That's tasty, right? That's called recovering from a fuck up, in my opinion. Like halfway through the thing, I realized, oh shit, I am not on time here, people. So I had to wing it. Okay. Then what did I do? I ended up pausing before I did it correctly, and that's kind of a bummer to have to like go and then start. You want to be part of the flow, all right? And granted, I'm trying to teach it, and I feel a little apprehensive about doing that, but not too bad. Obviously, any idea that naturally flows out of you is going to feel more natural than a contrived, targeted application of a concept initially, okay? That's all right. I'm down here in the basement playing at a very quiet level in front of, how many people could possibly be here now? I think there's 15 people watching. I mean, I obviously would like to impress you guys. I hope I'm also showing you that mistakes are part of the process. And so you should embrace them and learn how to convert them mid-mistake into passable stuff, okay? Is alternate picking a good technique to approach chromaticism? I mean, I think it's the bread and butter of all guitar playing. So if you aren't an excellent, picker, that's going to be a real issue for you. You're going to need to learn how to do alternate picking for sure. I mean, it doesn't matter that he was missing this middle finger because it's not essential to the picking side of things. And in fact, the guy, I can't believe he ended up, utilizing that little nub as a way to then do Travis picking, like, basically going. Getting that kind of funky, that kind of thing happening. Now, granted, I do it. I do it with these two fingers and hold this, and that way I'd never have to do any kind of chicanery with the pick, but that's just how I was raised. So I'm always reaching under there and giving a little what for, Right? So, yes, so to answer your question, Robert, alternate picking is not just a good technique, it is an essential one. And it's only after we effectively remove it from the need for development that we can examine the possibility of breaking those rules, right? I want it to feel unnatural to you when you aren't alternate picking. And so the funny thing is that people don't understand, how could they? I'm not holding it against it. They don't understand what the term alternate picking is kind of a misnomer. What do you think comes from his banjo days? The finger picking stuff? Definitely. If that's what you're saying, I agree wholeheartedly that that's where he learned to finger pick, is from playing the banjo. But back to the idea of the misconceptions surrounding alternate picking. Alternate picking does not, contrary to popular belief, mean that if the last thing my pick did was a downstroke, the next thing I do is an upstroke. Great, Robert, we're in agreement. Does not necessarily mean that we're always, the next stroke has to be an upstroke after a downstroke. It does not. It would, however, if that next stroke was a 16th note away from the last downstroke. If you've got a rest between them, then the next stroke should be a downstroke, because the idea is that the pick is going 1 E and a 2 E and a down up and a down up and all the way across the bar, so that whatever note you're hitting, you could actually reverse engineer it and say, oh, that should be a downstroke, that should be an upstroke, in order for the first note of the downbeat to be a downstroke. Downbeats and downstrokes need to align to create this effect, in my opinion. It is almost impossible to do this without the accents being in the right spot. And the surefire way to make the accents in the right spot is to do it in the bluegrass tradition of downbeats get downstrokes, because it's based out of all those fiddle tunes, right? So once again, we kind of reverse engineer. What did Jerry learn? He learned how to play bluegrass, and a lot of his approach here is derived from that knowledge. And that whole driving hand that's happening in 1, 2, 3, so boom, that's how. So the down bow, okay, has a lot more power, and so all the accents, all right, the natural accent, all right, we really have to lean into an up bowed accent on a fiddle, right? You have to really kind of grind in. So they sound awesome when this happens, but upbeat accents are kind of they're rare. They're kind of an unexpected palate cleanser. They're awesome. You have to learn how to use them. But the general natural tendency is for the accent to be on the downstroke of the bow with the fiddle tunes. Then all those fiddle tunes got translated from, you know, that great that great Kenny Baker record, and everybody treated that like the Bluegrass Bible for so long. And it wouldn't surprise me if all those, that tradition of guitar players taking the upstroke as an up bow and the downstroke as a down bow, and learning all those, the rudiments, the bluegrass rudiments in all those songs, learning the heads of them in that fashion, it really does inform your picking habits. So if you look at anyone from Doc Watson to Tony Rice, all the way up to Billy Strings, they're all approaching it in that same way. It's a very, very dogmatic downbeat, downstroke. Don't fuck with that. That's like, all right, with the exception of once you get great at that, you're allowed to break the rules. Okay, you're allowed to break the rules once you master that rule. All right, so what's the saying? I use it too often. A young man knows the rules, a wise man knows the exceptions. There are exceptions to this rule. So Brian Sutton, Billy Strings, I'm not putting myself in their category, but at this point, I start to break the rules too. I've been playing guitar for 40 some odd years, and at this point, almost 45 years. I'll be 55 in a couple of weeks. So I'll be 55 in a couple of weeks, pardon me. It'll be 45 years of playing since I was 10. All right, so eventually you learn how to utilize double downstrokes, okay? So that's down, down, up, down, up. But if there's a break afterwards, you have time to allow the little drummer in your right hand to kind of reset. And once they can recalibrate, then you get back into the point where your right hand is coming down on the downbeat. And that's the most essential feel thing, okay? That, and that you practice with the metronome, okay? So that's pretty much it for Ramble on Rose, okay? The idea being that we learn how to play it in one position and then migrate to a new position and a new position, and that's just using Ramble on Rose to learn how to solo. It doesn't have to be, I mean, if you were playing it tomorrow, I wouldn't ask you to just stay in one position. I'd say, all right, let's craft something that works for you at your gig, right? But if we're talking about using it as a template for furthering your musicianship, this is a great opportunity to learn the song and at the same time master one little swath of, one little stripe of the neck at a time. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little stripes. And yes, they correspond with the 5 things. And you could call it the cage shape if you want to. I don't care what you call it, just do it. It's gonna work. It's very, very helpful, okay? Now, once you get north of the 12th fret, there's a whole world of possibilities that exist because we've got this big mitt now that can really cover much wider intervals, okay? So we're up here and we can really cover the whole, pretty much the entire neck from the 12th fret up, okay? So don't be afraid to kind of spread out your hand a little bit more and get that. I do a lot of diagonal fingering. A lot of people poo-poo that. Fuck you. That's what I say. If this is how I see Eddie Van Halen playing Ice Cream Man, I'm doing what I got to do to get the extra reach. I can't do it like this. It does not. Wow, that just is like, I'm gonna break my hand. That's okay. So whatever, Andres Segovia, fine, it's good for you. But for me, I'm gonna go like that. All right. And so when I need extra reach, you can see that my hand starts to diagonal the fingers like I was playing a C chord. Right, so I'm doing that everywhere. All right, every now and again I'll straighten up, but generally no, okay? So, does anybody have any other questions? Because that was, well, a little bit past an hour for sure. There's obviously some long-winded Irish guy talking stuff, but other than that, oh. So that's it. All right. Basically learn to run around. Practice for alternate picking and landing downstroke on the downbeat. Yeah, sure. Lots of ways to do that. None of which are pleasant. Sorry. So Frankenstein 563, practice for, I've been alternate picking for years and play 16th notes at 170, but find myself starting with an upstroke a lot. Okay, so here's how I would suggest it. You need to align that downbeat and the downstroke, right? So pick something as mundane as just 16th notes, like. Just get so used to that being 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4, 1E and a 2E with an accent on 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Oh no, it's that fucking song by Stevie Nicks. Ah, kill me now. Can't stand it, but it's a good workout for this. All right, so Waddy Wachtel's right hand is a bit of a machine, all right? So 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4. By the way, nice guy, met him. Bad teeth. Cheap guitars. Sounded great, though. He was killer. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a, all right? So then what I want you to do is if we were to look at a lick and there's a hammer on it, you got to make sure that Peter Green forever. I don't quite understand the reference, but I do like Peter Green quite a bit. Very tasteful player, but not one who I wouldn't comment on his picking etiquette. I wouldn't comment on his picking style too much. I view him as more of a, digging deep kind of very soulful cat. Yeah, of course he's the original Fleetwood Mac. Oh, you're saying because Waddy Wachtel is playing alongside of the chanteuse, the singer, the nightbird, the cloaked one. She, by the way, she was a very sweet lady. A band I was playing in was playing at a function where she was playing as well, and I got a chance to meet her and Waddy, and they were lovely people. So I don't mean to make fun of them. They're obviously rock icons, and I'm a schmendrick in my basement. So let's reality check here. That said, that song, I'm convinced that time slows down when that song comes on the radio. I'm sure that song has bought her several houses. I wish I had written a song that could have bought my house and many others. But I'm convinced that time slows down because when that song comes on the radio, I immediately change the channel. And I come back 20 minutes later and it's still going on. I don't understand what sorcery is going on there, but it must be connected to her scarves. Okay, so that's a great exercise to start to understand what I refer to lovingly as the 16th note grid. Okay, so I want you to imagine graph paper, right? Little boxes, 1E and a, 2E and a, 3E and a, 4E and a, right? And that's down, up, 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 right? And each of those notes has an assigned pick stroke direction. Okay, and you don't break this for anything. Okay, now you can not pick and find another way of picking, but you have to think about which note you're playing, okay, and assign it the correct direction of the pick stroke. So let's just take one of my favorite little licks that I use here. Okay, your note is with 3 note per strings, hammer-ons, hammer-ons and offs. Okay, so we'll cover that in a second after I finish my little diatribe on alternate picking. I've got a great exercise for you that's good for, so stay tuned, Frankenstein 5693. Why'd you give yourself that handle? Is that because there was already other Frankensteins? Is your name Frank Stein or something, Francis Stein or something like that? I wonder what the origin of some of these handles are. Like I've got to hear. Is that in fact, yeah? You say yeah, but I mean, is that your? Oh, okay. Yeah, Jerry did love Frankenstein. So okay, so let's look at the way, like, okay, so if I'm looking at like a lick like this, okay, that's Lester flat G run. Let's clean up this. Let's take off that barky sound, okay? Right. All right, so it's just it's a bluegrass lick. Right, played everywhere. All right, so when we play it, it's going to be down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Now, why is it down, 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 up, down, up, down, up, down? Everything else seems alternated, but those first two strokes, they're both downstrokes. So you're not alternate picking, Jack. Wrong, I am, because there's a rest between down, down, up, down, up. It's down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, right? There's a space between this, there's a pause. It's not down, up, it's down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. There's just nothing on that first upstroke. So what I call that is, I want you to think of it like a pick proxy. There's a rest, we have to play the upstroke, okay? And so if we were to then say, alter that, I'm glad you see. So if we alter that line even further, in the execution of it, by going down, down, up, slide, the slide would be taking the place of my downstroke. Down, up, slide, up, down, up, down. And you'll see my hand even moves down as if it was taking it's a pantomime. So it can be in position to go, because that last note has to be a downstroke, right? 2, 3, 4, down, 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 2, 3, 4. So that's a good example. Even that totally necessary lick there has the two big exceptions of what I think of as pick proxy. Like, don't think that the next stroke has to be the opposite of what you just did, because that's kind of determined by the duration of space in terms of how many 16th notes are between the first note and the second note you hit. And yeah, you could go, if there was a big long break between two notes, you could start your line like right? That, in a way, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that line should be starting on an upstroke. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But I can end up brushing through. I could go, because I've got that big so I could do, or you see what I mean? While the thing is, so in a way you can end it however you want to end it. It just all depends on what is about to come after that, right? So if it feels good and it flows nicely into the next line, then nobody's going to bat an eye. If there's enough time, sure, but when it becomes like mission critical and you need to reverse engineer why something doesn't work for you, like say you're always wiping out when you try an idea, you really have to analyze, like, well, what the fuck's going on? Because somebody can't just break the laws of physics, right? Getting up and around the string is something that we all have to negotiate, okay? So alternate picking in one thing, if you want to get a good way of learning how to keep yourself focused and going from strings like, I always hand out this one because it's kind of fun and easy. All right, and then then you can, if you want to, you can get you can add in that and start changing these around. Okay, but that's a good way of keeping your picking going down, up, down, up, down, up, and kind of coming out a little bit on the upstroke when we're going in even numbers. Got to get that alternate picking thing together without any stress in there. It's got to be loose. All right, so definitely what I'm on about in terms of the okay, definitely looking at that. So you asked about pull-offs. Okay, let's first of all, if you're going to practice pull-offs, you can set yourself up for immediate frustration by practicing with the strat and clean. Okay, it's very hard to get. But this is the exercise. Okay, so how we're going to do this is we're going to practice going between two notes on the outer fingers. Outer, then inner, hammer on, okay? Then pull off from outer to inner. So we went outer, inner, out, inner, outer. Don't try to get too fast at first. What you want to do is get steady, not fast. So if you have a tick, 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 tick. Now be very careful about one thing. Don't try doing this with your thumb up here. Or if your thumb over, dude, get it back down, drop your hand. You want to be able to see what I call your punch knuckles when you do this in a mirror, right? Especially if you were on these, right? See how we can see that? If we're up here, this gets to be very exhausting because we're doing it like this. All right, if you've got what I call the tiger paw technique, where you're kind of doing all your motions from the fingers, rather than relaxing your palm, opening it up a little bit, then all of a sudden, Steve Austin's bionic arm can actually do, these tendons and muscles can do some shit, right? That's where it's all coming from. So if you want to see where my thumb is on the back of the neck, it's under the it's under or parallel with the skunk stripe, okay? All right, now granted, if you want to ease up your arm so that you're not doing that, you can practice this very easily up here. Now the trick is, don't lift your pink. I have a flying fucking pinky. It goes crazy. See how it's like, yeah! It comes down like Miss Piggy doing a karate chop back at the Muppet Show. Hi-ya! All right, try to keep it closer. All right, and we really got to come down, and then pull up. Just this one right here. This one's probably the hardest, right? This is the hardest move in guitar. It's coordinating these two. Frick and frack here do not play nice with one another. These three fingers, no problem. These three fingers, no problem. These two fingers, these guys, they bicker. Okay, why? They share a tendon. All right, these guys, they each have their own tendon. These guys, they each have their own tendon, but these two share a tendon. That's my understanding of the physiology of the human hand. And so when we ask this to happen, there's inherently crosstalk. There's like distortion between that, okay? There's like a crossover point where this one's like, I'm the guy. No, I'm the guy. And it's the two outfielders crashing into one another, and they always fuck up, okay? So when you can avoid this finger combination, all right, or this one, this is probably the weakest, and that's why when we do the Go Fuck Your Mother finger exercise, part 2 is always that. That one. Ugh, hate that fucking thing. All right. So if we're just going like that, let's say we were going, you want to practice it going down the E major scale. Something like that, or so that's one click on each one. If you assign a little, if you give a little gain to your guitar, you can get a little bit more sustain. There we go, nice and steady. Okay, and then bring it back. So, Jesus, that's hard though. You can do it on the B string as well, right? So what you want to do is make sure that you're not bending. Don't want to be pulling down to create the pull off. You got to create, not, okay? Otherwise it creates that kind of C6 sound. Now granted, there are two wonderful musicians that utilize that quite nicely, but that isn't the sound you're after, I have a feeling. All right, Alex Lifeson and in particular, Alan Holdsworth, spectacular use of that. All right, I think it was a very deliberate choice because ultimately they started doing it just fine and then just tweaking it with the tremolo bar. All right, I see here my issues with 3 notes per strings and hammer-on pull-off, so that's the way you're going to get through that. So let's do, so E major would be from here. Hate that thing. Okay, so good exercise though. Ugh, I mean, I don't have, I'm more of a picker than a legato dude, but if you want to get into that, that's how I would do it, is learn your 3 note per string shapes going up on every string. And so that would be, there's your E major again, and then this one's a bitch. I suck at this, you see? But with more gain, it obviously is easier because you get a little bit more sustain out of these wimpy little, you're creating all the attack. So the trick is, don't go, you want to have a very light pick attack if you're going to pick the first. Try to match the thing. My problem with most legato players is that there isn't enough percussion to the sound. I prefer some percussion. So, I mean, while some of my favorite players, like Eddie Van Halen, utilized them a lot, when you listen to Eddie Van Halen's pull-offs and hammer-ons, they sound like a fucking ton of bricks. They sound so percussive. A lot of palm muting, high gain, and that Marshall with those Celestian speakers. Man, it sounds so good. It sounds like a tabla going. It's amazing. All right, thanks. This lesson is okay. This is a lesson to all. Do not make bad habits. True, that's true. Don't make bad habits. It's harder to unlearn what you learn than to learn, right? I guess my question is the technique of when there is an odd number of notes on a string, it can throw off alternate picking, especially when ending on a downstroke when going down a string. Not necessarily. Okay, so let's look at the aforementioned "Go Fuck Your Mother" exercise. Okay, affectionately abbreviated to the GIFM. All right, so the initial teacher of this to me, Charlie, an exceptionally talented right-hand man. His right hand it looks like a power tool. It looks like it's on somebody's playing film back faster than it actually is taking place. It's truly upsetting to think that there's somebody with this kind of twitch muscle response and coordination. It's pretty impressive. Now, granted, he's like this kind of a picker, so it seems almost like it does seem like a bit of like a glitch in the matrix. All right, this is about as fast as I can do it, and that starts to stiffen up back here very quickly. All right, so there's clearly, I mean, I'm told there's another gear that all of us have, but we just have to learn the kinetics of unlocking it so that we're going into that high gear where it's basically like we're basically just doing a very loose motion, but it still has some control. And you'll see Bukovac do this, and you'll see some other guys that have got Eddie had the kind of hummingbird looking picking technique where it goes like for the tremolo picking. It's just an incredible skill. I don't possess it. I am not that good, I guess, in that, or I've never developed that sound. And I would like to, actually. If anybody out there thinks they could teach me, I'd happily pay you for some lessons. Because I'm sick of all the cheating and workarounds. But the closest I've come is this exercise that Charlie taught me. Sorry for the digression there. All right, and it starts out by playing 3 notes per string, okay, in 16th notes, okay? Not down, up, down. We don't want it to sound like triplets. We want it to sound like 16th notes. So that's 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E. So that would be 1E and a 2E and a 3, 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a, okay? So that would be the exercise on the ascending version. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E. So it's 3, 3, 3, 3. We get all the way up to the B string, still 3s, but when we come up here, it's going to look like this. Okay, so 1E and a 2E and a 3. So the accent, accent, accent forms this diminished staircase vibe. Okay, so once we get there, we're now practicing doing an outside string change on the first string pair. Out, out, and then on the next one, we're on the inside. So we now have the two most frequent, well, the only two ways that we can change strings is from the outside or from the inside, provided we're doing alternate picking, okay? And we're doing it back to back. We're going outside string change, inside string change, outside string change. Accent keeps shifting from here to here to here to here to here to here. Nah. All right, and we get no. There's no shelter in there. Like some of these other chromatic exercises that I'll like lean on is like accent, 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 like it's all on the same note, all in the same place. And that's good for learning like how to be driving with these, all right? This is like a precursor to this exercise, right? So this 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E. Metronome helps. Down, up, 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 down, up. Okay, now you've got that. Make sure you come here. All right. We didn't use the pinky at all. So what are we going to do? Okay, so now we get both of those up to whatever, like 120, 130 BPM, and you're in business. That's good. That's good, but it's not like Ingve good. No, that's like 160. And that last 30 clicks on your metronome, that is the grail. That is your Percival out looking for the grail forever. That is not easy terrain to overtake. It is really, really challenging. All right, so it's kind of like the last 5 pounds on your diet or something like that. You're going to struggle with it for a long time. All right, wish that there was some sort of GLP shot I could give myself to learn how to do this shit and catch those last 5 pounds on my diet, because the fastest I've been able to get up to is like 145. Okay, and it's like really hard. It's really hard for me. You play that same line all the time with in shapes, but always follow my last downstroke with another downstroke on the next string. So of course we can utilize, the best thing about that exercise though has yet to be explained to you, Frankenstein. Check this out. What we're here to practice is not directional downstroke string changes, but we could obviously go. So alternate down, alternate double down, right? So, but what do we end up with here? We end up with the tendency to hear triplets, because the downstroke off that rest stroke tends to go ba-ba-do, 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 all right? And that's the problem there, is that we're going to be practicing alternate. We can practice that downstroke here, but we lose the 16th note feel, okay? So what we want to do is to do, right, so it's very good for the triplet feel. Like I use that myself when I go like, right, dot, ba-ba-da-bop, 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 what I call the bolero rhythmic figure, right? Okay, so, but if we were looking to actually improve our picking and at the same time learn upstroke accents, is a great opportunity for that. So that would be, so 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and like that kind of. Okay, I can't even fathom what the hell's going on, because I can't think in so many ways. I have to think about the double down and an upstroke immediately following it one time. That's just too much for me. I can't do that. So I tend not to do that as that exercise, but I have utilized it to practice the directional downstroke and upstrokes. Oh, sorry. Very helpful for that. And then last but not least, if we do that and then practice that with the weak fingers. The next thing is to scratch our heads and wonder, why on earth are we doing it with these 3 fingers and these 3 fingers in this bullshit chromatic shape? And the answer to this is, it's not too late to cover now. I'm happy could I teach soloing over Goodnight Irene? I would have to learn Goodnight Irene before I could teach it to you, James. Is that a country song? I'm a little unfamiliar with some of these tunes that folks throw out. And while I'd be happy to expound on anything that I know, the one thing I try not to do is talk shit about stuff I don't know. So if you don't mind, in another comment, maybe telling me where to find the definitive version of that, I'd be happy to take a look at it. If I can catch a wave and figure out how to teach it, I'll happily do so. But allow me to get back to this one thing that I was covering with Frankenstein here. Right? We're doing these kind of ridiculous, that's not really, I mean, granted, I use them occasionally, these little 3 chromatic notes in time. Sure, I do that from time to time. So it's a good exercise to have under my belt. That said, this is kind of musically bereft. It doesn't really have a lot of musicality to it. So what we can do is fulfill the last ring of progress with the GIFM. All right, the Go Fuck Your Mother experience doesn't end right here or here. It actually has one more layer to this exercise, where we embrace the 3-note per string scale patterns that cover the modes of the major scale. So should we start it here in G, we'd be looking at this: down, up, 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 down, and then back. So 1E and a 2E and a 3E. Sorry, 1E and Okay, now if we want to just run that back and forth over and over and over again until we get really comfortable with our major scale, we're learning G major and E minor at the same time. If we're smart, we can then figure out this little move, and this will help us go up through all of our modes in the key of G. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. We won't do that. That's what we'll do. Sorry. So that would be. Okay, so that third of the G is a downstroke. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and 3. Shift. Welcome to A Dorian, B Phrygian, C Lydian, D Mixolydian, E Aeolian, and F Locrian, all right, and so on. That's the psycho reality of that exercise, is that it starts out with this pseudochromatic looking thing that why would I ever learn that? And there's a couple of applications we've already talked about. And then we can learn to even up our pinky so it's not totally weak and useless. And then we can work on the directional downstroke element, both ascending and descending through this chromatic exercise. And then we could practice alternate picking through just the one major scale and the directional picking through the major scale. That kind of. So down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. Sorry, that would. Up. Okay, and then. All right, so by practicing those, that's kind of a smoothing out effect, all right? But then we have the idea of coming up through the various modes. And so if you did that in G, you know, the modes of G over and over and over again, then the modes of C over and over and over again, and the modes of F over and over and over again, the modes of B flat, and kept going backwards around the cycle of fifths, you'd be pretty well rounded with your right hand picking and your left hand knowledge of the major scale. It's a pretty intensive workout, but it's kind of necessary to some degree, I think. Okay, so Frankenstein, I hope that plus the you know, the alternate picking exercises and the, by the way, that kind of the legato exercise, that can also be a great picking exercise. That kind of thing. So those are like Yngwie sixths. It's just that he plays them like with the harmonic minor scale. He does like that kind of thing where you're hearing this. Okay, so he's got that, you know, that kind of harmonic minor thing happening. I recently watched a Cooking Garcia Khan version of Goodnight Irene. Okay, so I'll try to check that out and see if it's any good. Frankenstein says, thank you so much, brother. Means a lot. How much are my hourly lessons? Why don't you just text me and we'll talk about it. I try not to talk money online, like when I'm doing this. Because the truth of the matter is that this whole process right here is somewhat of a testify for me. Like, it's a good opportunity to kind of just emote and talk. And at the same time, while it might raise people's awareness of me, that would ultimately lead to commercial stuff, I try to just sublimate that element of it right here. I'm not really trying to sell any product or anything here. This is more of the best I can think of as like, hey, you know, okay, fine, fuck it. Lessons are $80 a piece when purchased in bulk and $100 a piece when purchased individually. So that's a lot of money. That's not cheap. That's not like Eric's gonna teach you to rock, and he's sitting there doing the finger guns like, yeah, and then you take the little thing, okay? But the idea being that you're looking at it at a big, you know, compromise on your monthly liquidity for what, let's say it, you know, and the idea is that you know, I charge like real money because it's real stuff. It's not a fucking joke. But on the same token, you know, that's a lot of money for people. And I've been in positions in my life where that was just not feasible. So I thought that this would be like a nice halfway point between being able to bridge the gap between the there's no interaction with my pre-recorded lessons for folks that like what they found with you know, all the stuff on my channel. And this is certainly an easier thing to create than crafting a meticulous 3-chorus version of Althea or whatever it was that I did that got anybody's attention, right? That took much more time than just turning on the camera and talking into it and answering some questions off a teleprompter and playing guitar and having fun, which is what I would be doing right now anyway before my lessons. I would be enjoying myself with the guitar and trying to learn. I'm a student as much as I'm a teacher, and so to me it's a blurry line where this, you know, is just like me hanging out with my friends, but you know, there's 11 of them here and I'm only talking to 1 or 2 of you at a time, unfortunately. I wish there was more participation across the group, but I don't really mind if one person wants to feel like a connection. That's great. So the lessons are, you know, they're for people that realize, hey, you know, I want to make that next step and have a connection and like a musical mentor in a way that is more bespoke than this. But the lessons that are already pre-recorded, they're kind of one-sided, right? They may or may not be tailored to your level. So question their viability for beginners, for example, because most of my stuff is a little bit more, you know, up. So, you know, so that's kind of where I'm coming at it. And as far as my rates, I think they're commensurate with my ability to help. And I think that and if you're interested in this style of music, I don't think there's too bad. I don't think there's too many people that could do a better job than me. And certainly, I think if they could, they would probably charge more. I mean, there are players that are just obviously smoke my ass. But I know this music, and I'm happy to share what I know about it. And if you're interested, then I suggest you reach out to me at jack_divine@hotmail.com, or you can text me at 917-806-2601. The number again. Anyway, 917-806-2601. And a lot of people, you know, who have been students or are currently students, they drop by often at these office hours, and some of them might even chime in, hey, you were just teaching me that last night, you know, or we can cover this next lesson or something like that. The truth is, my students are teaching me all the time. In fact, this lesson actually sprung from my student who wanted to learn about sixths, and I showed him a bunch of how sixths and thirds. He went and made this awesome little lesson of. Like that, like a little etude based around the Ramble on Rose chords using sixths. And I was like, dude, first of all, for being a self-starter, there's nothing that makes a teacher happier than watching a student take the information that they have and immediately, this fucking cat went and applied it to he applied the knowledge that I gave him to a song that he liked, and then immediately spat it back at me on video. And it was just like, it was a great feedback loop. And all of a sudden, like, that got me thinking, man, that's a great, man, it's been a while since I thought about that song and how great it could be to teach people more about chord tone soloing. And sure enough, that bled into my lesson with this more advanced student of mine last night. And there it was in my loop, and I just put the bass line down on it, the one that disappeared halfway through today's lesson. And I figured, you know what, these cats who are out there, they're always asking about how do you visualize and how do you practice chord tone soloing. This is a great opportunity because it's not there's no diatonic changes particularly. You're thinking about chord by chord, like D, E, F sharp, G, D, D, G, A. And then making your way back to the D and take another turn on the slide. It's a fantastic circle of education right there, courtesy of Jer Bear and Robert Hunter. All right, all set to the wonderful loping lysergic Motown. Great tune, love it. All right, everybody. I hope you've got joy in your hearts and are preparing for a fun, relaxing weekend. If you're not and you're going to be working, hats off to you for being hard worker on the weekend. It is tough. I'm told. I've led a life of joy and ease. I'm not really one to talk about hard work, save for this. Okay, so if you learned anything today, give me a thumbs up or drop a comment or subscribe if you haven't. And if you did, thank you for doing that. It means a lot to me to have a meaningful dialogue with the folks out there. And I guess I better reach out to my student who wanted to have a joint lesson with, he's got a gig coming up. So him and his rhythm guitar player, or maybe it's the lead guitar player, they wanted to schedule a one-off here where we can talk about how they need to frame their chording on their, I think they're playing, and then All right, everybody. Thank you for everything. I'll see you soon. Okay? Bye-bye.